Hi, everybody. Miss Lerner here. I am here to talk a little bit about personality disorders today. Just as a general rule, all the disorders you went over in the two assignments on that first graphic organizer, those are major disorders. Okay. We call them acute, which just means that they have like a, very, very clear onset and duration. Personality disorders are a little bit different. Personality disorders are things that are so intertwined with that person's sense of self that you can't really tell where the person ends and the personality disorder begins. Okay. And for that reason, sometimes they're very controversial. Are they just traits? Are they just characteristic behaviors? What is it? Okay. That being said, personality disorders often coexist with major disorders, and that is a situation we call comorbidity. Okay, so um, personality disorders are also very strange, just in the sense that if someone with a personality disorder finds the right pattern of love or occupation, they could actually be pretty functional. Okay, whereas you know major disorders are going one of the major hallmarks of those clinical disorders is going to be dysfunctionality. All right, so there's three major clusters of personality disorders. There's the anxious fearful cluster, there is the odd eccentric cluster, and there is the dramatic emotional erratic cluster. Okay, so let's talk about some of these. Okay, and I didn't do all of them. I did omit obsessive compulsive personality disorder just because it's a little bit murky, the difference between the two, and I just didn't want to really confuse you, so I kind of left that out for the moment. Okay, but the other two that are going to be in the anxious fearful cluster are avoidant and dependent personality disorder. Okay, now how do I tell if something's a personality disorder versus a major disorder? Well, the way you tell is if it contains the words personality disorder. Okay, so avoidant personality disorder includes people who are going to fear disapproval from others. They're going to avoid social situations and interactions with others, and they are very shy. It's not that they don't like people, they're afraid that they're going to embarrass themselves or humiliate themselves in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Um, Now, as I said, if you find the right job or the right partnership, if applicable, then you can be pretty functional. So, an avoidant personality, if they have a solitary profession, they work from home, they have a low risk job, they can be pretty useful in society. As you can imagine, avoidant personalities do not tend to get in relationships because of the nature of their disorder. However, sometimes they will find another avoidant as a partner. Okay. Dependent personality disorder is going to be characterized by, as I was saying, dependent personality disorder is going to be characterized by a number of traits. They're people with dependent personalities are sort of like chameleons. They seek approval from others steadily. They can't make their own decisions. There's a lack of initiative there. Where do you want to go for dinner? I don't know. Where do you want to go for dinner? They don't take responsibility for their actions, and they are pretty needy in general. Okay, so where might we find a dependent personality thriving? Well, maybe as a homemaker, maybe as an assistant, an administrative assistant, something where someone is telling you what to do. And we do find people with dependent personality disorder thriving in the military. Okay, now what kind of partnerships do dependent personalities tend to have when they are, functional? People who are dominant, people who are leaders. And unfortunately, sometimes these dominant personalities that are with dependent personalities tend to be abusive. So much so that we sometimes say that people will be codependent, okay, on one another. Okay, the next cluster that we will talk about is the odd eccentric cluster. And it kind of reminds me of, as a major disorder, like the branch that is, psychotic or there's a break from reality, but it doesn't really, these things don't necessarily have like the delusions or the hallucinations that mark schizophrenia or a schizophrenia diagnosis. So someone with paranoid personality disorder is very hypersensitive and easily slighted. They're suspicious of other people's intentions. They are watching all the time, observing other people. They're isolated. They withdraw from other people, and they have sort of a feeling of self-importance some way. Okay. Now, one thing is that they can work from home. They can have low risk jobs. They can be a security job guard or a private investigator or a spy. In some ways, those paranoid features, being hyper vigilant, working for them. Okay. As you can imagine, paranoid personalities tend to not actually couple up with other people because they are paranoid that the other person is, cheating on them or, having an affair. So they tend to be alone. The next odd eccentric cluster disorder is a schizoid personality disorder. People with schizoid personality disorder are kind of have a flat affect. They're detached from others. They lack relationships with other people. They are what we consider to be loners. Okay, so we might find someone with schizoid personality disorder being like a computer programmer, a hacker, working from home in some capacity, not having to interact with other people and not minding. They don't mind that they don't have to interact with other people. That's what they would prefer. Okay. Since they don't prefer to interact with other people, they really don't usually have partners. So they're usually, their partnership is none. Okay. Schizotypal is a little bit different. Schizotypal is still kind of odd in that odd eccentric cluster, and they're socially isolated, but they have this pattern of odd beliefs, paranoia and delusions. Okay, they can have psychotic episodes sometimes. They might feel like they can read the future or that they see patterns in things that other people do not see. But schizotypal is not as intense as a sheer schizophrenic major episode. Okay, so sometimes people with these bizarre kind of peculiar beliefs and appearance, they might be artists, they might be psychics, they might be writers. Now, if I were to put all of these personality disorders in a lineup, it would be easiest just on appearance alone to pick out the schizotypal person, okay? Because they have a peculiar way of dressing and presenting themselves in their appearance. As far as partnerships go, either no partnership or another schizotypal. Like they're both kind of perceiving the world in a different way, and they can get on board with that. All right. Then we get to kind of the most interesting type of cluster, I would say, that is portrayed pretty commonly in movies and TV and what have you. The dramatic, emotional, erratic cluster. Okay, so antisocial personality disorder, I don't want you to get confused. Okay, antisocial personality disorder does not mean that you don't like people. Antisocial personality disorder actually means that you are against society's values and laws. Okay, so you're against societal norms. So, in that way, you might violate others' rights, lie, steal, have a lack of empathy, be aggressive towards other people, have poor relationships, have a disregard for safety, be manipulative, and be egocentric. People with antisocial personality disorder is what we tend to refer to as sociopaths or psychopaths. We kind of use them interchangeably in today's society. And people with antisocial personality disorder tend to be those who are criminals, who don't have a sense of morality or conscience, and people who are serial killers will fall under this category of antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder tends to occur very early on in life, and the trademark hallmark symptoms are, a child who likes to abuse animals and start fires and do other things that are against sort of society's codes. So what jobs? As I said, a criminal, maybe, someone who's swindling you in some way, like a used car salesman, sometimes a politician, anyone who might, kind of value their own sort of success over society's codes. Now, what kind of person does an antisocial personality get with? Well, usually someone who's dependent, someone who's passive, someone who's easily manipulated. You see people with antisocial personality disorder sort of jumping from relationship to relationship until they, end up making money off the person, exploiting the person, and so forth. All right. The next dramatic emotional erratic cluster disorder is borderline personality disorder. It's called borderline personality disorder because it is on the borderline of psychotic sort of behavior. Okay. When I think about borderline personality disorder, it's really a disorder of mood instability. Okay. So your moods are swinging all over the place. You don't really have a sense of self. You are scared to be abandoned. And because of this fear of abandonment, you do this thing where you push and pull people all the time. This is like the core of what you are, that you're unstable in identity and your behavior, and you have this black and white thinking about the world. Okay. So people with borderline personalities are going to frequently try to fill up that void with certain things like drugs and alcohol and eating disorders. So, therefore, people with borderline personality disorder tend to have comorbidities with things like bulimia, bipolar disorder, and other things that other eating disorders and self-injurious behaviors. Okay, and if we're talking about um, the jobs for someone with borderline personality disorder, it's going to have to be part of a team or an assistant. They can't be on their own because they're very unpredictable. There's a lot of suicidal attempts and self-injurious behavior and, other things like that. So for them to be relatively stable, they would have to have kind of a caretaker, someone who is attentive to their needs. All right. A histrionic personality is someone who is overly emotional and dramatic. Okay. They're like, look at me, look at me, look at me. They're seductive. They blame failures on other people. They're attention seeking in some way. As I said, they might, draw attention to the way they dress or they speak or what have you. So they could be an actor or a model. In the past, some of my students have suggested that there are teachers with histrionic personality disorder. There could be, someone who is like a lady of the evening type of scenario as well. Okay. Histrionic personality disorder is going to seek out people who worship that person or who are very clingy to the person. Okay. And kind of associated or tangentially related to histrionic personality disorder is narcissistic personality disorder. If you say that someone is narcissistic, it just means that they're entirely self-centered and egocentric. Okay, so those with narcissistic personality disorder show entitlement. They are jealous of other people's success. They're self-absorbed. They think every single thing that people do is about them. They need to be the center of attention. And they just think that they're entitled to more than everyone else in society. Maybe a CEO, maybe a politician, maybe a teacher, an actor, or a model might be someone with narcissistic personality disorder. And people with narcissistic personality disorder tend to go for those who are wealthy, easily manipulated, or are very physically attractive. Okay, so I hope that this kind of clarifies things for you. And gives you a whole other sort of vantage points for mental illness. Okay, that it's not just some of the major disorders, it's the personality disorders as well. All right, thanks. Bye-bye for now.